Yeah, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, everyone. I'm happy to kick off this session with this happy set of panelists on our screens. We would be using the next 90 minutes to go through the topic, transitioning from discussion about the DVF framework down to conversations about how organizations are using this mail DVF across their mail systems. So I'll be sharing my screen and running us through the agenda, and also sharing a few house rules to make it easier for you to participate in the conversation. Please, can we all see my screen? Okay. So once again, welcome to this session on maximizing and measuring impact of innovations, and introduction to the Disability, Feasibility and Viability Assessment Framework, also known as DVF. We'll be introducing the assessment framework and tools over the next 90 minutes. So this is how the session would run. For the first 5 minutes, we would have the general introductions, and then we'd go straight into the DVF framework and what that means at GSF and how we've been using that with organizations. And then we'll move on to discuss the DVF assessment tool, which is a mail tool that we use within the organization to assess organizations. And then we'll go on to share case studies from panelists here on how they've used the DVF in the past. These are pre-recorded videos which we'll be watching. And then we'll go on to the panel questions and answers afterwards. Straight after that, we'll be sharing the Impact at Scale Toolkit, which comprises the DVF assessment and all the various tools and case studies we've developed to support organizations trying to scale. And then if you have any questions regarding the toolkit, you could would answer them right afterwards. Finally, we'd have the session poll. We've gathered a few questions we'd like participants to respond to. So please spend the final 5 minutes responding to this poll to give us feedback about the session, and then we're rounding off right afterwards. So quickly, I'll talk about the Global Schools Forum. The Global Schools Forum is a collaborative community and innovation accelerator and partnership builder for non-state organizations who are working across low and medium income communities to improve education at scale for underserved children in these areas. Since 2017, we've grown to over 123 organizations within our network, cutting across 60 countries. These organizations are supporting over 20 million children through over 252,000 schools. The ultimate goal is to ensure that all children can realize their potential through safe access to quality education. So one of the ways in which we are trying to accelerate this process is through the Impact at Scale Labs, which is supporting organizations to scale local solutions in their communities and in other spaces. We do this by carefully selecting innovations through an application process, and then driving funding and significant technical support to these organizations to help them through that scaling journey. That started about 2 years ago, and since then we've run 2 labs. One has been completed, one is currently ongoing in Kenya, and that has supported or supporting about 7 grantees, and we've given about 600,000 USD in grants in total to these organizations. So for this particular session, we have 2 sections of people who are joining these conversations, 3 members of GSF and 3 members of organizations who have been in the Impact at Scale Labs. I'll start with Michael, who is the Senior Learning Manager at Sabre Education. Sabre Education, Dignitas and Gyan Shala are the first organizations that joined the Impact at Scale Labs, and are also the first organizations to use the DVF framework and tools within the Impact at Scale Lab. So we're happy to have the 3 organizations here, starting with Michael, who is the Senior Learning Manager at Sabre, then Nancy, who is a Research and Development Manager at Dignitas, and finally Chirantan, who leads Gyan Shala. From GSF side, I'm happy to introduce Ursula, who is a Senior Monitoring and Evaluation Manager at GSF. I'm Habeeb. I'll be moderating this session, ably joined by Lucas, who has been supporting organizations in the labs through their skill journey as well. Okay. Without much ado, I'll go into the DVF framework. So what is the DVF framework? As we set up the Impact at Scale Labs, we designed and to support organizations who were scaling solutions. We adapted the framework. We adapted a framework widely publicized by IDEO, which is called the DVF, which we had to mainstream to support education innovations at the labs. So this DVF framework stands for disability, viability, and feasibility, and that cuts across very key questions that we tend to ask organizations about their scale readiness. The first question about disability is simply helping us understand if the organization is fulfilling an important need with their innovation, and if there's strong evidence that the solution works in the context in which they are deploying it. Finally, we are also checking true disability to see if there's a potential for scale, for impact at scale on education outcomes from the solution that's been deployed. Viability takes care of the capacity of the organizations to deliver at the right cost and sustainably over a long period. So through disability viability, we're looking at if the solution has the right revenue, the right funders, and the right cost to deliver. While for feasibility, we're checking out if they have the right team, the right partnerships, and the right systems for them to scale their solution. According to IDEO, at the center of these 3 are organizations who are able to successfully scale their innovations. So you need a mixture of these 3 to be able to deliver your solution at scale. So talking about the adaptation of the DVF, the way it was previously set up catered to a wider range of solutions across the world. But for us to clearly support organizations in our network, we broke this into various components, 2 sections. And the first is the innovation management component, and the second focus a little bit more on the MEL component. Across the 3, we have 5 individual components in disability, in viability, and feasibility. And these detail all the key components that organizations need to fulfill for them to be scale ready. So this goes from problem solution fit, replication potential. Do they have the right channels to deliver their solution? Have they provided a strong value to their solution, and do they have the right positioning when considered in context of other solutions that are available to the target audience? Finally, is there a credible measurement of the impact of that solution to verify that the solution works? In terms of viability, we are looking at whether the solution is sustainable, and that includes having a clear financial model, whether the cost is well analyzed, and whether the income that the organizations are relying on, the solution is relying on, is sustainable. Second, other things include funder alignment. Do you have the right relationships with funders who potentially support the solutions, especially for organizations who depend on external funding? Third, we're looking at things around general financial sustainability of the organization. Do you have the right, what's the current level of income? Do you have the right runway to continue to implement a solution over a long period? Then we're also looking at scale partnerships in terms of revenue, funding, and cost sharing. So they have the right partnerships to ensure that your revenue continues to come in and continue to support your impact at scale. Then data and data collection is extremely important for organizations who are trying to scale their impact. So checking out whether you have a sustainable and effective process for learning at scale would tell us if you're scale ready. In area of feasibility, we're looking at whether organizations have the right support within and outside the organization to scale their solution. What level of restriction or obstacles would they have to face to scale specific ideas in their communities? Do they have the right leadership and the right governance structures to ensure the organizations continue to move in the right direction and continue to check whether things are done properly? Is there the right operational capacity within the team to deliver? Do you have the right team to deliver on the promises that you're making through your solution? And do you have the right resources to support that team? Then we're looking at scale partnerships that could potentially improve your access to more beneficiaries. So when you say you want to scale to 100,000 people, do you have the right partnerships to ensure you can reach those people? Finally, back to data maturity, can we see within your organization the appropriate mail skills to continue to measure very rapidly and deploy those learning within your team? Are you storing data properly? Do you have the right processes to measure data and use data within your organization? So that's a quick introduction of the DVF. We have a lot of resources that you could read up on this subsequently, which we'll be sharing towards the end of this program. But before we get to that, I would like to hand over to Ursula to talk about the DVF assessment.
Thank you so much for that introduction, Habeeb. I'm just going to give us a little bit of background of why we are bringing this DVF tool to this discussion, especially around monitoring and evaluation, and just give some examples of why we think this is a useful tool when we're thinking about monitoring and evaluation and the impact sector as a whole. If we go to the next slide, Habeeb. So first of all, one use of the DVF framework for us is to use the assessment tool that we have created as a benchmark to see where we are, see where our innovation is, see where our organization is, and to use that as our baseline or as our starting point. So the DVF framework and the assessment that we have created using it enables us to holistically understand the innovation or the solution that we have created and its potential for impact. And as Habeeb has already explained, we understand that all three elements of the DVF must be fulfilled to ensure that the innovation can reach its potential to scale. So we can use this as a benchmark to really understand where an innovation and an organization is starting from, and can be used to track progress across these components. So regularly reviewing and coming back to the framework allows us to be able to track the progress that an organization or an innovation is making across these three areas, and allows us to change our activities or change our strategy as and where necessary. Secondly, we think that the framework, as well as the adaptations that we have made to it, as Habeeb has discussed, are really important by making sure that we keep impact at the heart of what we do and what we are scaling. So we think it's really important that we scale things which have potential to have significant outcomes and have significant impact in the sectors that we are working in, rather than just scaling things which are potentially like easy to scale, but don't have the impact that we are looking for. So we think with especially around the consideration of the desirability element of the framework, it really makes sure that we are focusing at every step of our journey and every point in our strategy, that we are ensuring that we are working towards impact on the outcomes that we are seeking to change. And we can therefore make sure that we are keeping that in mind as we are implementing our scaling strategy and as we are building our scaling strategy forward. And the framework also encourages us to really think about the desirability element and the impact element right from the beginning of the process. So really encouraging us to incorporate that as a key element of the way that we develop going forward. And lastly, in terms of the viability and the feasibility elements of the framework, we have really built in the processes and the systems and the resources that organizations need to consider to build in monitoring, evaluation, and learning capacity as a way of working within their organizations. And this allows us to ensure that we are measuring and maximizing the impact of our work as we scale. And as we scale, we are building up the monitoring, evaluation, and learning capacities, processes, and systems that we need to support us as we scale. We know that as an organization scales, adds potentially more users, it gets more complicated, we need to make sure that the systems and processes and the internal capacity that we have within an organization or within an innovation team needs to also continuously improve to meet those demands, and to make sure that we are always building in data-driven decision-making, evidence-based decision-making, and learning as key processes in our organization, and really cultivating that culture of learning across our teams. I'm now going to pass over to Lucas, who's going to take us through an example of how to use this.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Ursula. Happy to build up on that. And you can find the tool itself and some other more detailed resources on how to use it later on. But we'll just start from the basics and give a quick example of the value of it from our perspective. So first of all, it is a form. So in the current format of it, it's a super easy to use. It's basically a questionnaire where you can fill out with your reflections, and you're going to receive a final document by email at the end of the process. So you can also use it as a benchmark for future reflections, as suggestions, but also you can use it in group. So you can have your leadership, for example, of your organization taking the DVF assessment, passing through this self-reflection process, scoring these 15 elements, and then you can have a session where you reflect together. From our experience, it's really valuable using in this sense. And the questionnaire, next slide, please. Habeeb. The questionnaire is super simple. You're gonna find some explanations along the process. Basically, you will find 15 questions about those 15 elements Habeeb just shared with us. And on each one of them, you have to score these elements from 1 to 5. You have like some guidelines around it. And really what's important here is not to seek for the super right score in a precise way, because the value of the tool for us is putting in perspective those 15 elements and having a reflection about your priorities, your what is going well, or what you need to put attention. So really make your best effort to score, but again, it's not the case to be super precise about it, because in the next slide, please, Habeeb, we also ask you to fill out explanation about it. And the objective here is not to try to persuade another person that your organization is awesome, but rather really foster a kind of a self-reflection process while filling out the DVF assessment, where you can use this explanation as a benchmark to compare in the future or to share with your leadership group. And just to give you a quick example about that, we have an organization working with social emotional learning with governments. And please go to the next slide, Habeeb. It's a real case of organization that does this strong government partnerships, really empowering local teachers to conduct CEL activities with students. They are reaching a large scale in their country, and they self-evaluated the organization in this way. So you can find, following the color patterns here, their scores, and highlighting two main objectives that you can see from this score. One is helping them to reflect on their priorities. So you can see the elements that you have lower scores and reflect about the reason of that, and should we focus on these elements, or should we focus on what we are doing good right now and really leveraging these elements to tackle or challenge our current challenges. So one is this reflection about priorities, and the second one is understanding the links between these elements. So for example, and highlighting some male elements here, from this example, one observation of them is, for example, the channel element inside desirability. So they have already validated their channel through government partnerships, and they really can articulate their impact narrative around it. For example, highlighting their impact on really empowering teachers and local managers around CEL. So they are promoting an impact beyond their product itself, and really helping this partner governments to increase their capacity around this topic. The second element here is, as they operate empowering local staff, we can see, for example, inside the feasibility aspect, they score themselves as low in operational capacity, because please go to the next slide, Habeeb. We can see also their explanation about it. They score themselves low in terms of operational capacity because they have a really huge challenge on replicating the same operational mechanisms from one local government to another, because they really co-creates the program with each local partner. It is also a challenge for them, but it's also their strong aspect in terms of sustainability of innovation. So we are talking about viability, because they can also share costs with these government partners, and we can see that they have a cost per child really low. So in terms of data maturity, for example, they scored themselves as a as low, because SEL is an nascent topic in the research area around MEL. We need to better foster an internal culture of MEL, and we can see the relation of it with their operational decision on empowering local teachers. So they are not so close to what's happening in the classroom in order to better gather data and making sure they are learning from this process. So we can see here the trade-offs between MEL aspects and operational aspects really in the same document, in the same scores, and have again a strategic reflection about it. So please go to the next slide, Habeeb. And now we're going to reflect about this link I started to explore between the MEL systems and the way we are using the DVF assessment itself. And happy to you, Ursula, to go deeper in this reflection. Thank you.
Thanks, Lucas. Fantastic. So I'm just going to share a little bit about how we at the Global Schools Forum are using the DVF framework in our own work. And then we're going to hear from our Impact at Scale Labs participants in terms of how they have used it in their projects as well. So if we go to the next slide. So we're using the DVF framework in 3 ways in our own work as the Global Schools Forum as part of the Impact at Scale Labs. So first of all, we use the criteria around the DVF assessment to identify solutions which have the potential to impact education outcomes at scale. So we use this framework and we have a tool which helps us to review applications to the Impact at Scale Labs program. And we use that framework to help us really understand the different elements of a solution and a application to the Impact at Scale Labs program. And we use the scores around this to really understand which innovations have potential. As Lucas said, it's not about scoring a 5 across each element of the DVF framework, but it's about us seeing where there are the strengths in the innovation or the solution potential, and where the support that Global Schools Forum can offer will help to really catalyze progress across the other elements and support an innovation to impact at scale. So we use it as an identification tool to really understand which innovations or which promising solutions would be best for us to support. Secondly, we use it as a diagnostic tool. So as Lucas has just outlined with the previous case of a social emotional learning innovation, we work closely with innovation organizations to baseline their scale readiness using the DVF framework and to support them to prioritize areas that build into their action plans to create their scale strategy. So we use this diagnosis as a real kind of baselining exercise to make sure that both from the Global Schools Forum side, but also all the different team members in the implementing organization are on the same page, and we can come together around one framework to really understand what we need to prioritize to support an innovation to reach that impact at scale. So we really use that diagnosis to craft the journey, the action plan, and the next steps for an innovation organization. And thirdly, we use this tool to monitor the progress of our partner implementing organizations as they implement their scale strategies. So as the participants who are on this call will be very familiar with, we come back to this DVF assessment at critical junctures in the programs that we do to really assess if organizations and innovations are making progress in the areas that they have prioritized in their action plans, and if that is supporting them to build up their progress towards scaling up their innovation. So these are the three ways that we internally at the Global Schools Forum are using this tool as a framework to really support our implementation across the duration of our Impact at Scale Labs program. So now we are going to hand over to our panelists. We have some reflections from all three of the organizations who participated in our first cohort of the Impact at Scale Labs program on their use of the DVF assessment. I think as Habeeb shared early on, we have the Q&A function. So as the panelists are discussing, if you have any questions either for the whole panel or for one particular panelist, please use the Q&A function to ask your question, and we will come to those in the Q&A part of today's session.
Hello, I'm Chirantan. I'm the CEO of Gyan Shala, where we are trying to develop scalable solutions to improve the quality of primary education in India. Gyan Shala is an attempt to solve India's problem of poor learning outcomes by relying on what we call synchronized pedagogy and the child's own capacity to learn. Over the last 25 years, we have worked with more than 350,000 children who are out of school and from disadvantaged communities. We have done this through our community learning centers and matched the learning outcomes of India's best schools at 1/4 the costs. Currently, Gyan Shala is working with 25,000 children every year. We have evolved effective classroom processes that optimize the child's learning environment, ensuring that the right mix of subject learning through exposition, peer learning through group activities, self-learning in extremely well-designed worksheets, and individualized feedback from the teacher to the child is provided every day for every subject. Over the years, we have been able to scale our solution to varying degrees in the government system and improve the quality of learning for millions of children through our government school support program across 4 states in India. To further scale our impact, we developed a solution for low-fee private schools in India. Through this, we intended to improve the quality of learning outcomes in these schools by implementing our curriculum approach. We started with a small pilot in 2021, and as a part of Impact at Scale Labs, we have scaled to 50 schools in 2023 and hope to scale to 75 to 80 schools in 2024. The DVF framework has helped our organization to develop an effective strategy for our affordable private schools program over the last 1.5 years. We began by using the DVF assessment to diagnose the gaps in our solution, such as the need to study and map the affordable private schools landscape more thoroughly, the need to articulate our solution's goals more thoroughly, the need to align our internal structures and responsibilities to these goals, and the need to develop a model that would help us assess the viability of our program structure over the long term at any given point in time. So how did the DVF help us? I will begin with desirability. The framework helped us to understand and articulate our solution to the APS system more effectively. After the diagnostics, we undertook a longish exercise to arrive at the theory of change for our solution, right from articulating our consumer's problem statement and our innovation's objectives more precisely, to identifying the key enabling and derailing factors for the innovation, both internal and external, and to developing a clear strategy to meet our goals, which included identifying activities and mechanisms of change that need to be constantly monitored, and also identifying short-term goals and long-term outcomes against which the program's performance needs to be assessed. Once the key aspects to be monitored were identified, we were able to develop our MEL framework, which comprised of activities and outputs to be monitored during supervision and through our MIS. On the feasibility aspect of the framework, Gyan Shala has structured its main field data sources and internal responsibilities based on the MEL framework and TOC. We are constantly monitoring and updating our team and systems to ensure that we are moving towards the desired outcomes as defined in the TOC. And finally, on the viability aspect of the framework and making sure that we are moving towards making the program self-sustaining, a financial model has been built integrating the current expenditures, current revenues, and projections of operations at scale. This allows us to constantly monitor all the cost centers and also to assess the viability of every change in the program structure over the long term, right at the time of introducing the change. So this is how the DVF framework has helped us. Of course, the road is bumpy, and there continue to be new challenges that confront us every few months. But we try to continue using the framework and accommodate the new learnings into the TOC, MEL, and financial model. We hope that this will help us to scale to over 200 schools over the next 3 years and become self-sustaining. Thank you.
Thank you. Just a reminder, please use the Q&A to ask any questions you'd like, and we'll pick that up once we get to the panel discussion proper. So I'll move over to the next video.
I am Michael Klutse, the Senior Learning Manager at Sabre Education. Sabre Education is an international NGO which since 2004 has been working with the Ghana Education Service to make sure that preschool learners in Ghana have the best of education. Historically, Sabre Education have been working with Ghana Education Service to train up to 4,500 teachers for now in various districts, various schools in the country to ensure that learners in these schools get the best of education, of course, for improved learning outcomes. Having done this over the period, we are partnering the GES as I speak to be able to expand this training across the country to about 48,000 teachers. Clearly, the model for private schools we have works. However, the challenge that we face is that we know we have 30% of the Ghanaian children in private schools. What do we do? And with Sabre, we have one thing in mind, that we don't leave any child behind. And therefore, one thing that we are doing now, we did actually in 2022, was to roll out this particular intervention in private schools. Because of that, we decided to do a pilot in some of the schools in Central Region. And once we rolled out the pilot, we actually faced difficulties or challenges because we didn't really have a full understanding of the sector. The dynamics was different. The type and motivation level of teachers were different. The business model of the private schools was also very different from what we saw in the public schools. The monitoring evaluation system, the verification system, most of the systems, the ecosystem of the private schools, very different from what we found in the public schools. And therefore, one of the bottlenecks we faced was our inability to move with the model as we have done in the public schools. Therefore, meeting GSF or being part of the GSF Impact at Scale Lab afforded us the opportunity to get access to this very important DVF framework, which then helped us to be able to re-examine and assess our model again. It gave us the opportunity to, as in the process of re-examining, to even carry out a scoping study of private schools across the country. This scoping study was a very important piece of the puzzle that helped us to have a very clear understanding of the market, the desire, the need, even the understanding and the thinking, the motivation level of teachers, of head teachers, and even the pricing mechanisms of even some of the private schools that we intend to work with. In fact, it was a tool that helped us to unpack the private schools pieces by pieces, and we've been able to come up with a model that we think now is able to move to private schools. As I speak, we are following that pilot and then also following the scoping study. We've now come up with like a model for private schools. And this model for private schools is currently being piloted in 26 schools in the central region of Ghana. It is very important for us to note that the schools that were chosen were low-fee private schools, which has been the target market that we're working with. And we got this idea also from the scoping study, because that was the market that was in need. And the desire for the head teacher, the desire for the principals or the proprietors for the schools was also there, because then we understood them and understood the kind of things and then the marketing strategies that was needed to be able to market it to them. Now, it is also important to note that although for the public schools, we had a lot of the ecosystem around monitoring, evaluation, and also parental engagement was also quite straightforward in the public schools. For private schools, it wasn't that straightforward. We needed to also design marketing tools to be able to engage them, and we were able to do that using the DVF framework. That helped us to also be able to unpack what was needed to even to market this particular product to the schools. Now, as I speak, Sabre Education uses this tool so well in even ensuring that new interventions that do come up for discussion on our work, we're able to understand the desirability, able to assess what are the needs, what is the market, and even to extend that we're able to now question ourselves, do we have the capacity in-house, or do we need to fall on external resources to be able to do the work? So the desirability verification and then the feasibility framework, that the DVF framework, has given us enormous benefits, and that is something that we really thank GSF for. We really want to say a big thank you to the GSF team for making this tool available to us, which has been of great help to us as I speak, and we continue to use it. And we have never regretted being part of this process. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michael's video. We move on to the final one with Dignitas and Nancy's. Nancy will be narrating how the DVF has been of help to Dignitas scaling journey.
Hello, my name is Nancy Gikandi. I'm the Research and Development Manager at Dignitas. Dignitas is an education development organization that's based in Nairobi, Kenya. And our mission is to equip and empower school leaders and teachers who will transform opportunities for the next generation. We partner with primary schools, both government and low-fee private schools in urban informal settlements to strengthen school leadership and instructional quality so that all children can fulfill their potential. As part of the Impact at Scale Labs, we tested Lead Now. So Lead Now is a digital training and coaching toolkit that offers tech-enabled training and coaching to school leaders and teachers to improve on the quality of instruction for foundational literacy and numeracy. So in schools that we partner with, we engage the instructional leader, who is the school leader, basically either the head teacher or the deputy head teacher, to work alongside the teachers, so the early years teachers. And so the role of the instructional leader is to develop the necessary systems that ensure that there is continuous support to these teachers as they implement these practices in the school. And so as we are designing the test, we had to reflect on these three components: desirability, feasibility, and viability. And even at the very beginning, how we applied this is we engaged the instructional leaders and teachers in focus group discussions to simply understand behavior change and what motivates them to actually take up these skills. And so we wanted to understand what the motivations are, what the opportunities are. We also wanted to understand what gap exists when it comes to instruction for foundational literacy and numeracy, so that we can design Lead Now up with that in mind. And so we did the test. We had several findings, and currently one of the things that we are working on is improving on data usage. So Lead Now, we have different assessments that are actually embedded there. And so we are looking at, okay, with all this data, how is it being put into use at the school level? So we have the education officials who are from the Ministry of Education who are mandated to visit these schools and support them. So we are looking at how can we visualize this data for them so that it becomes data that they're using in their schools and put that into use during coaching. But also we are looking at even the instructional leaders who are the support system in the school, how are they using this data and how can we visualize it in simple but meaningful ways so that they can use that data even as they provide the coaching and feedback support to the teachers. And so it's a tool that we continue using even as we implement further testing this year to see how the dashboards are going to be used by the education officers, what we are learning so that we can continue refining Lead Now further for scale. And so just reflecting on a challenge that we've experienced, I think the major challenge was thinking like a profit because we are a non-profit. And so one of the things we're learning there is that we need to think about feasibility a little bit more in terms of who do we need to bring on board, like because we're looking at the systems, also looking at the people, like who do we need to bring on board so that like a business development manager of some sort, so that they come and and look at Lead Now as a business in itself. And so the challenge for us was the non-profit mindset, and putting that at the back so that we can now start thinking like profit-making companies. And so yeah, part of the work that we're doing now is thinking about that and how we can bring on board an expert who will now help us think about Lead Now as a standalone business. Yeah, a lot of things that we are learning here, and we continue refining it so that we can make it better. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. So over the next 30 minutes, we will be posing a few questions to the panelists who would be responding to these questions to help us understand a little further how they've used the DVF assessment and how some of these, like how they align it, the assessment and the toolkit to their internal mail systems to ensure that they continue to deliver their solutions at the right impact at scale. So once again, reintroducing the panelists here. We have Chirantan from Gyan Shala, we have Ursula from GSF, we have Nancy from Dignitas, and we have Michael from Sabre. Lucas is also joining to respond to any more questions about the DVF. You can unmute your mic and say a little hi. Okay. All right. So we have just a few questions that have been asked earlier, and a few now that have been added through the Q&A. So I'll be asking some of these questions. Please use the Q&A section to provide any other questions you'd like to add to this. We are very hopeful to clarify how you could potentially use DVF assessment and tools for your organizations, and this is a really good avenue for you to get those clarifications. So one of the first questions that we have here is the DVF appropriate for every stage of an organization or innovation, that is startup or scale-ups? When is it most useful and why? I'll be posting this question to Ursula, and I'm happy for Lucas to support afterwards.
Thanks so much, Habeeb. Great question. And I think we had a similar question in the Q&A as well. I would say the DVF is appropriate across all different stages of kind of your journey to scale as an organization, but it is most appropriate when you're making key decisions about your pathway to scale. So it's not necessarily something that you will come back to on a regular basis. It's something that you might rely on more during specific moments of your journey. I think it's not necessarily as actionable when you're at very early stage innovation, when you're mostly focusing on the product or the intervention that you are designing and that you are implementing. But I think it is also very useful to have a good level of awareness of the different elements across each parts of the framework, so that you can think forward and design with a scale mindset. I think it's really important, if our objective is to have impact at scale, we keep that in mind from the very beginning of when we are designing our solutions and designing our interventions, that even if these are not necessarily aspects that you will address in at the very start of your design phase, is something that you have in mind, and that you know when to bring in those other components as you make key decisions on your pathway to scale and your pathway to growth. So I would say it's more important at junctures, when you have bigger pieces of strategy and decision to make, that's when it's appropriate for you to come back to the framework, come back to the assessment, and just review where you are. And at some points in time, you will rely more heavily on the DVF framework, and at other points, you may be just focusing on the implementation of your strategy that you have designed with the framework in mind. But I would love to hear from Lucas as well, and also any other reflections from the rest of the group.
Oh, that was a perfect response. Thanks for that, Ursula. And I completely agree. And we can see the examples of the three organizations that are sharing with us here, this sweet spot, just after having a validated product or process or program, and then creating the necessary mechanisms to scale it. So when you start putting all together, so let's say the MEL components, the product market fit, your internal capacity in terms of leadership, the channel operations, and the viability component, when you start putting all together, having a comprehensive tool, it's really important to have this overview. And the other side of it, in terms of when it's less helpful, is when, for me, when you need to refine a specific component or generate like a super precise score of something. Or so the DVF assessment is really created with, again, this comprehensive view in mind, not to give you detailed score about your leadership capacity or to be the best tool for refining your leadership capacity, for example, but to put in perspective your leadership capacity with the other 14 elements of your DVF assessment.
Thank you, Lucas and Ursula. I wonder if any of the other panelists have any response to this in terms of when has the DVF assessment and tool being very useful for you, and at what stage has this been extremely useful, and when has it not been very helpful?
Both Ursula and Lucas said, what I feel is that once the product or your service has been validated, and when you are in the process of scaling up, you're in the process of identifying when will you become sustainable, identifying what is this degree of scaling that you can achieve, as also what is the value that you can offer at different stages of scaling. So when you are taking all of these decisions, it really helps.
Thank you, Chirantan. If there are no more additions, I'll go on to the next question. So who within the organization should be completing the DVF assessment? I'd like Ursula to also respond to this, while all three organizations can also let us know, based on their usage, who have they felt found this tool most useful, especially with the assessment, and basically what's the best approach for organizations to use this?
Thanks, Habeeb. And I think this question, or the answer to this question, is very dependent from organization to organization, and especially on the size of the organization and the kind of familiarity of individual team members. I think you will have seen that the assessment itself incorporates a lot of different elements of an organization's operations and programs. So it's really important that the person who completes it has a good understanding of all of those different elements of an organization, especially the operational sides, which might not always be visible or might not always be known by everyone. I think it's also really useful, as I think Lucas mentioned, that this can be done as a group exercise. So you can complete the DVF assessment as a group, which will allow you to get in opinions from different team members, for example, who might have those pieces of information held separately. Another option is that you can ask different members of your team to complete it individually, and then you can also compare your results. So for example, that's really useful if you have one person or team who is responsible for monitoring and evaluation, another person or team who's responsible for, say, program implementation, and someone else who's maybe on operations or finance. And then you also get the perspectives of the specific area of that person and team, but also how that interacts and how that is perceived by other team members. So for example, it might be that the monitoring and evaluation officer thinks that their data is very accessible and used by everyone in the organization, but maybe if you speak to the program officer, they might not have the same perspective, or they might not find it as easy to use. So it is a good opportunity of also identifying where there are gaps or differences in perception across the organization as well. So I think there's really no one size fits all in terms of who is best to complete the assessment. But it is really important that you are able to choose either one person or a group of people who has a good overview across the organization, the solution that you are wanting to implement, and the operations of that.
Thanks. Chirantan, Nancy, Michael. Nancy, please go on.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, Nancy, please.
Okay. I actually agree with Ursula, because for Dignitas, it had to be a collaborative process. We had to get input from different people. You cannot feel it on your own, because it has elements of strategy, there are elements of operations, of finance, and also program implementation. So how we viewed it was a tool that sits in the organization and is accessible to each and every person, because again, even when you're designing programs, because we're looking at it as a tool that we continue using even as we design other interventions. So it needs to be accessible to everyone, so that even as we think in our different teams, or as we design in our different teams, we have considered all the three components. So yeah, so I agree with you, Ursula.
Michael, please go on. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, so I mean, just to add my voice to that, there's no one particular person that can complete this, but most importantly, I think persons that have responsibility or like on strategy, very important, and can take decisions. Because one thing that you could see that sometimes as you're gathering the information and taking or answering this and that, certain decisions would have to be made, and then maybe the next set of action also taken. So it's a mixture of male persons, program persons, and people with authority or with capacity to make decisions that would help, because you're designing, as I said, an intervention, and therefore they need to make sure that certain decisions are taken along the line. It's key. Just to add that. Thank you.
Thank you. Chirantan, do you have anything to add to that?
That's the thing. Like Ursula suggested, when different members of the organization go through the framework and go through the tool, you also realize what is the level of alignment as far as understanding of the product and understanding of the solution within the team, and whether everyone looks at your approach the same way, or there are differences in that. So that discussion also helps a lot. And ours is a slightly middle-aged organization. The innovation is new. So there's a lot of knowledge that resides among the different members of the organization. And this framework kind of helps bring that out. And then bring that out and discuss that. So yeah, when everyone participates, it fits.
Thank you, Chirantan. So I'll quickly move over to the questions asked by the audience in the Q&A section. If you have any more questions as one of the members of the audience, please go on here to add the extra questions. So I'll pick out the first one, which is, do you think the DVF can be adapted to innovations in sectors other than education? Lucas, Ursula.
Yeah, I can take that one. Yes, absolutely. So in fact, the DVF, the original DVF framework, as Habeeb mentioned in the beginning, comes from the IDEO, so an American consultancy on innovation, and it's a general purpose, not only on education. And when we adapted it, you can see this 15 elements we created to break down each three major components, and they are not specific to education. You can see there 15 core elements to scale readiness for any organization wanting to bringing together MEL components with operational components in order to create a good scale strategy. So we made it specific to education when we create case studies around education, when we if indeed use it with your member organizations inside GSF and so on. But you can definitely use the DVF framework and the tool itself, going beyond the examples we are using and so on, but you can definitely use it in other sectors as well.
Thank you, Lucas. I have a second question here, which is, can funders use the DVF to identify and fund education quality partners? Ursula.
Thanks, Habeeb. And I love this question. And I think this is definitely a possibility and something that we at GSF are really interested in looking into further and seeing how funders and other supporting organizations can use the DVF framework to make sure that we are funding and supporting innovations that truly have the potential to create impact at scale. I think, as I kind of outlined earlier, one of the ways that we at GSF are using the DVF framework is to identify promising solutions that we onboard into our Impact at Scale Labs program. And we have found it very helpful to have the DVF framework in place. We use it to structure our application process and also our review and selection process as well. So we have found it very useful to have the DVF as a framework to really structure how we identify promising solutions and using that across our range of cohorts. I think as a funder or as an organization that is identifying solutions, it's good to have the overview across all of the different categories of the DVF. But also to think like, what is the main priority and sort of where do you balance the majority of your focus when you're considering decision making using the DVF or any other framework. And that's where I think it's really important that we think about the desirability element as a really key decision making point to make sure that we are prioritizing and promoting solutions which have impact at the core of their achievement, but thinking about the feasibility and the viability as key areas if this impact is something that can be scaled up. So I think it's definitely possible to be used by funders or by other organizations such as GSF that are identifying promising solutions and innovation organizations to partner with.
Thank you very much, Ursula. So I'll go back to the questions on the screen. And now we'll be discussing, asking three organizations, how has the use of DVF framework impacted evidence generation and use within your organization? That's question number 6. Michael.
Yes, thank you very much, Habeeb. You know, for us, the framework helped us to have a very good understanding of the intervention that we were taking to scale. Initially, because we were coming heavily understanding the public sector, the private sector was quite new, and there was a need to pivot quickly to understand it. So there was a scoping study that was conducted. Then from the scoping study, we are now able to have very good or clearer understanding of the need within the sector. That helped us to refine our theory of change. For instance, in the public school space that we work with, things around monitoring and support systems are pretty much streamlined because it's under the government, and it's not under one person like the private schools that the principal, the proprietor can decide that I don't want this, I want that. Also, the understanding of the teachers and the level of the teachers are also different. They had formal, very formal, qualified teachers, teacher education as compared to the private schools. So we actually needed to refine this approach to get teachers or to get the private schools to actually understand the product that is coming to them. And therefore, once we got them to understand the product that we were taking to them, we needed to test whether indeed they really understood it. So we drafted a theory of change. We, in fact, took our model of our theory of change from the public school to the private school, and then it kind of virtually collapsed. So once whatever we saw from the DVF helped us to unpack, we needed to now rework out the theory of change around the support systems that need to be in place, the kind of training model that needs to be put together, the number of training days, even the kind of advocacy that needs to go in. It's very different from what we do for the public spaces. So it helped us to reshape our theory of change, but then ultimately, the goal is to ensure that learners within the private schools also have the best of education. So it's kind of taking a step back and doing more around the desirability of the work. So most of our indicators and I would say the activities were around desirability more than let's say the viability aspect of it. Some of the questions around the viability, we looked at it from more qualitative data collection and all of that. So it was a mixture of both the validity and then the desirability that fed into the monitoring evaluation system that we have in place for the private schools. Unlike the public schools where we have the education service heavily re-leveraging on their support, it's non-existent for the private schools. So we needed also to see how best to advocate and get supports within the system of the GES to see whether they are able to take up. Even then, we are still managing it to see how best we can leverage on the capacity that is still in there, and whether the private school associations can also play a role in all of that. So it's a mixture of a lot of things coming together, and we are still within the space of learning, and we hope to get to the logical conclusion, hopefully by the end of this pilot. Thank you.
Thank you. Nancy, you want to go next?
Yes. For us also, I think most of the milestones that we created were around desirability, in that, of course, developing Lead Now as a platform, we built it off over 10 years of experience, implementing in-person programs, but then also being a tech-enabled platform, we still learned that there was a lot to learn, and particularly given that the focus on foundational literacy and numeracy. And one of the biggest lessons for us was designing a platform with a behavioral science lens. And so one of the things that we did to help us develop the theory of change was conduct focus group discussions. So we felt it was better, more qualitative, because we've seen a lot of literature. So we wanted to understand our context and understand first what existing practices are there for effective delivery of foundational literacy and numeracy, but also what systems are put in place, even by the school leaders or by the government. When you think of the policies, what actually exists to support effective delivery of foundational literacy and numeracy. And so for us, with the behavioral science lens, we wanted to understand first, like, where are the gaps, and also what motivates them to take up any new skills and apply them. What are the barriers that most likely will become potential risks for us, and how do we mitigate them? And so we got a lot of information that helped us design the theory of change, but also speak into how the innovation now would ideally look like. And one of the key elements was, how can we design it in a way that it's interactive and allows for shifts in practices? Because at the end of the day, they're going to be learning on their own, but how do they get to apply that we can see the impact on learning outcomes? But also the major thing was, as we think about scale and M&E for scale, it's something that we would not think on a daily basis, like how would monitoring, evaluation, and learning look like at scale? And that over the period, actually started thinking of, okay, so how do we collect this data if we're in 3 other countries? And how will that data look like? So it has even changed how we are thinking about MEL, and how we design. And so even as it speaks to all other aspects, I think the main one was desirability, because that has a lot of impact on these other pieces. If it's not desirable, then maybe you need to question whether actually you should be doing it. And so it was such a learning process for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. Chirantan, do you have any addition to this?
Yeah, I am interpreting the question slightly differently, maybe, but for us, the evidence generation has been more internal, and the designing of an effective MEL has helped us identify which components in our offering are working and which need to be improved upon. And the process of identification of these components has become very transparent. And for any change that needs to be made in the program structure, also we are able to evaluate it both in terms of its non-negotiability, in terms of sustaining our program and our relationship with the school. We are able to identify this through the MEL. And we are also simultaneously able to evaluate the viability of this change over the long term with the help of the financial model.
Thank you very much, Chirantan. The time is fast spent. Unfortunately, we couldn't go over all the questions. But in one way or the other, we've tried to answer some of these questions in various forms of the responses that has been given by the panelists. So thank you so much, Chirantan, Michael, and Nancy, for providing context from the user perspective of the DVF as the first set of people who were able to let us know how well this is working, and also instruct how we are adapting and improving the DVF to support organizations like you, especially in the education sector. So as we've realized so far, the DVF assessments has largely been helping organizations explore what gaps exist in their scale journey. And for various organizations, they're finding solutions locally to bridge those gaps. But we are also, from our own end, developing tools which we're using to support organizations in our network to cover some of these gaps, and more importantly, telling stories of other organizations who are moving along that skill journey, whether through some of the key components of the DVF, or overall for organizations who are further along that journey. So the Impact at Scale Toolkit is a resource hub where we are providing all these tools, whether the DVF assessment or the case studies or the tools that organizations are using to cover to cover their gaps while making their impact across various sectors. So I'm happy to introduce the Impact at Scale Toolkit, which has been developed by the impact team members of the Impact at Scale Labs, with a lot of support from organizations within our network to ensure more organizations can have access to testing their impact readiness through the DVF assessment, and also getting tools to cover those gaps, and while reading case studies that helps them understand better how various organizations have used those particular tools to move along their scale journey. So the Impact at Scale Toolkit again has these 4 various components: the DVF assessments, the tools, the case studies, and the interviews at scale. For the DVF assessment, as Lucas shared earlier, it's a series of questions that were prepared to examine your skill readiness for your solution. And as organizations mentioned, and as panelists mentioned previously, right, there are very specific points where the DVF assessment is very instrumental. And that's usually when you're trying to scale a solution. So this DVF assessment helps you through that journey. So while doing that, we have various tools that we're developing that we'll continue to add to, that organizations like Gyan Shala and Sabre and Dignitas have used in the past to start to improve their capacity and their capacity to scale. And while they're doing that, we are collecting their stories. So there's a lot of case studies from Gyan Shala, from Sabre, from Dignitas, on how they've used some of these tools to provide you more context into how they are scaling, like they're covering specific gaps that they've identified through their DVF assessment. Then finally, to provide a bigger picture on the scaling journey, we have several interviews that we've conducted. 3 at the moment on the page, on the toolkit, to help you contextualize the overall journey and why some of the various components of the DVF are necessary to be covered while you're planning for scale. So the best way to use the toolkit is to start with the DVF assessment. So you go in, click on the DVF assessment link, and you'll be able to access the DVF assessment form, which was shared earlier. You answer there as honest as you can, and then at the end you get a sort of report sheet that's sent to your email, where you can explore what are the major gaps that you have and what are the strengths that you have. Then you could go over to the tools to start to explore which of these tools are appropriate for the gaps that you've uncovered. So we have various tools in there. I'll be expanding more on them as I move along. Then you could use the case studies to understand how other organizations have used some of those tools in the past, what this meant for their scale journey, and what kind of next steps they try to take after completing those processes. So for each of the tools, you find that we've done a lot of work to ensure that is as explanatory as possible, starting with video explanation. So for each of the tools that we provided on the toolkit, we have a video explanation by various experts who have explained how to use this tool. And if you prefer going through a more text-based guide instead, we also have explanation documents that you could go through at your own time, at your own pace, to further explore how to use the DVF tool. Then finally, you have the tool itself, which is a template, often that you could input responses based on well-structured guides to help you realize the best outcome for that tool when you're done. So for each of these tools, we have a video explanation, we have the document, the guiding documents, and finally the template itself for you to use by yourself or with your team members. Then case studies, as we mentioned, here are going into depth for specific components. So for example, the theory of change process is a key component for you to understand your problem solution fit. And so for organizations who are discovering that they have some clear gaps in their problem solution fit, it's important for them to develop a theory of change. So for example, here we have Gyan Shala sharing how they've been able to use the theory of change to develop clarity for their scale journey in the APS sector. So that's just one example. So we have various examples like that, talking about various components of your scale journey. And another one here is that of Dignitas, on how they've been testing for impact at scale, which is also another way of ensuring desirability within your solution. So we have some clear markers here that let you know what case studies are fit for where each of these case studies belong. So for example, the three case studies here are tag disability problem solution fit. So you find that across the various case studies and tools as well, where each of these tools and where each of these case studies fit to ensure that you're reading the right thing to support your strategy process. Then we have scale interviews, where we go in depth with organizations who are further along the scale journey to share the various ways in which they scaled, especially in the context of the DVF. And we have this, for example, this awesome interview between Lucas and Sabrina at Kidogo. We have at least 3 videos for you to get started on for three different organizations who are reflecting on their scale journey using the DVF lens and sharing best practices and learnings that you would find very useful for your journey. I particularly enjoyed this interview with Sabrina. It was very informative about Dignitas, Kidogo's journey, and in general to help me understand our organization scale in total. Okay. So somebody has asked in the question, is there a link to this DVF case study? This Scale Toolkit. Absolutely, yeah. So you could use this code or use the link here, but this is a short video to illustrate how the toolkit currently looks. So you have a quick introduction to the DVF and how that's informed our design of the toolkit, a quick guide on how to use the resources. You have all the tools that we've created at the moment. For example, the Scale framework, the peer dual canvas, the problem tree. They have inspiring journeys to scale, which includes in-depth interviews with organizations who are scaling their solutions. And then finally, case studies for specific components of the DVF. You also have responses from these awesome organizations about how this has been very useful to them. So you could scan these. You could scan the QR code for you to have access to this. Would also be sending the link to everyone after this session, so you could also explore the toolkit from there. We'll be very happy for you to reach out to us to let us know any feedback you'd like to provide. But for now, I would like to share a quick poll for everyone who is here to quickly fill before we round up the session. I'll be launching the poll now. In the meantime, I'll be handing over back to Ursula to give a closing for this session.
Thank you so much, Habeeb, and especially thank you to Chirantan, Nancy, Mike, and Lucas for joining us and presenting their insights from using the DVF framework in their work. As Habeeb mentioned, all of these case studies, the DVF assessment, and other tools that we have developed as part of the Impact at Scale Labs are available on the Global Schools Forum website, and you will be able to access them through the link and the QR code that is on the screen at the moment. So we'd really welcome you all to have a look at the Impact at Scale Toolkit, and we're always very open to hearing any feedback about how you found the DVF assessment and the other aspects of our toolkit. So please do keep in touch with GSF. Let us know how you get on with the toolkit and if you have any feedback for us. Habeeb, I think there is also some questions about will we be sharing the slides from this presentation? And yes, Habeeb will be sharing a follow-up via email to everyone who signed up to the session in advance. Thank you. Thank you so much. And yeah, we're looking forward to continuing the conversation together into the future.
Thank you so much, Ursula. I don't know if any other persons have final words among the panelists. Please, one more time, if you're in the audience, please spend the last few minutes to respond to the survey. We really appreciate your feedback. So please go on. Any other panelists would like to make a final word?
Yes, let me have a go. Thanks so much to the GSF team for putting this event together and for us to share our learnings. And also, it's been a very interesting journey. I've learned a lot. And thanks so much for your support, your guidance, and your being a sounding board and getting to really appreciate it. And thanks to all the participants also for the attendees also for making time to listen to us. Thank you.
Santiago, please go on. Okay, sorry.
Thank you, Habeeb, and thank you everyone for connecting, for sharing the experiences, dealing with the DVF framework and with the tool. Many thanks to Lucas and Habeeb for putting this together and for Ursula to taking on the challenging questions. I'm very happy to see all the comments and the chats going on there. We hope that the DVF starts a very nice conversation within the organizations and with GSF to see how we can scale better, most impactful and transforming solutions for our children around the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Santiago. Chirantan.
Thank you, Habeeb, Lucas, Ursula, Santiago, everyone from the GSF team for helping us, getting our hands dirty and becoming good at using the DVF. And on behalf of Michael and Nancy, I'm sure all the three organizations have benefited a lot. And we hope to continue using this framework and scaling successfully, hopefully. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Nancy, please go on.
Yeah, thank you to the GSF team for the opportunity to share our experiences and even just to reflect on the journey and how far we've come and the learnings that we've gained along the way, but also appreciating how comprehensive the tools are and that you're going to make sure that we continue using them even beyond our current innovations, any new innovations that we actually design, that we have these in mind. Thank you.
Great. If there's no other person, I'll be bringing this to a close. I think Yeah, this has been very good, and we'll be uploading this session on YouTube for any other person who'd like to view the program. Beyond that, I'll be sending an email to participants with the link and slides for this session, so you could continue to follow up, but you could also share with the rest of your team. That being said, thank you so much, and I hope you have a great week ahead. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.